This conference will now be recorded.
I was just going to say we're going to go ahead and turn recording on, so please know that this is being recorded. So for anybody who would like a copy afterwards, we'll be able to provide that, and anybody who can't attend, they'll be able to get that as well. So let me just first start, take you through some of the controls. So Karen, I think, do you have slides where we talk about, yeah. So if you don't mind, if you're not speaking, if you can go ahead and mute. So mute yourself so we don't have like angry keyboard typing and all that stuff, and we don't have background noise. We are going to, so there's you got the mute button, the camera, the camera button. Feel free to, you can leave your camera on or turn it off. We will, towards the end of this, have a...
Sono scarponi come stanno?
Hey guys, I'm hearing a little background noise. If you don't mind, if you can mute yourself.
Cioè, a me sono laghi un po' di vita.
Yeah. Sandro, could you put yourself on mute, please?
Yeah, so thank you. That's very helpful. Yeah, so if everybody can mute yourself if you're not speaking, that'd be great. Towards the end, we will have a Q&A session. What did we say, about 10, 15 minutes? Rick, I think, about 10 minutes?
Yeah, right around
so with that,
maybe a little more.
Yeah, perfect. Awesome. And we will be we'll be respectful. We'll finish on time, but if anybody would like to stay around and ask a couple more questions, I'm sure we can allocate a little bit more time past, but we're going to try to make sure we get done on time. So with that, so Joe, our fearless leader, couldn't be here. I didn't step back fast enough, so he asked me to kind of kick this off and be, I guess, the moderator. He's probably out with William Shatner up in space, and all that stuff. So let me introduce Rick from Peerless. Rick, Peerless is an established player in the space, a longtime valued member of the Cloud Communication Alliance. We're very appreciative that they're doing this presentation to share their vision of VOIP Evolution. I think they have a decent amount of background to be able to talk to this topic. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Rick for the presentation.
Great, thank you, Alan. Appreciate it. I appreciate everyone's time on getting on the webinar today. What we did is several years ago, when you take a look at it, it was really Vonage taking the lead to allow voice over IP providers to go and get their own phone numbers. So you didn't have to go out and buy those phone numbers from a Peerless or a Lumen or a Bandwidth or whoever, that you can control your own destiny from a number perspective. We were selected by Vonage to work with them to prove in the concept of FCC and the rest in order to allow for what is considered either iPads or interconnected VoIP services to be done. We worked with them. We were the first one to be successful from a Peerless perspective in making it work and giving them and everybody in the industry the ability to control your own numbers and sort of your own destiny from that perspective. When we got through that phase, we stood back and we said, hey, look, there's more to just getting your own numbers. You need to also take a look at the regulatory and the filings that you have to do to qualify for that. So we were lucky enough to partner up with CLA and Matt LaHood, and he's going to start off talking about, and we're breaking this up because I think it's multiple pieces in order to be successful on this. So Matt will start off talking about DIDs, what you need to do, what's the requirements about it, why it's important to do from that perspective, and it's all a turnkey package with Peerless and CLA. And then from there, I'll talk a little bit about Peerless, and I also have on the webinar today Tony Hiller, who's also one of the co-founders of Peerless. He will talk about our network and from a network perspective and the things you need to look at in this environment, especially as technology is changing in the West and what we face from a networking perspective and the threats we have, to take a look at what you need to do. And then our third partner that we have as part of our Evolution service offering is ATL and porting.com. One of the biggest issues that everyone faces today is really, okay, I can get my numbers, I can get through the regulatory stuff, I have the network stuff with Peerless, but how do I do porting and what happens in situations with porting, especially if I have to react quickly to a situation or whatever. So we have Paul LaRegina on the call from ATL and porting.com, and he'll take a little time going over that and educating you guys on that. And if you have any questions at the end, we'll be more than happy to answer them. Also, we can set up other meetings to go into it in a little bit more detail. So at this time, Matt, would you like to kick us off with the regulatory front and things to
Sure.
take a look at and all that kind of fun
Yeah.
stuff?
Great. Yeah, thank you. Right here on this slide, I'll just start and mention a little bit about our company. Most of the participants here might know us as Global Strategic Accountants, and in November of 2020, GSA merged with the 8th largest accounting firm in the United States called Clifton Larson Allen, or CLA. And since then, we have continued on our path of trying to keep up with Peerless as a visionary in this area of providing IP-enabled service providers with the ability to get authorized by the FCC for local number resource authorization. And that's the application that Rick Knight mentioned. If you would move to the next slide, please. Rick Knight mentioned 3 years ago, just after the Vonage process of appeal to the FCC and the approval, it wasn't a year later that Rick Knight came to our office and we started to put the picture together, and that included ATL. The reason it's very important that you understand why the three of us are together is it really takes all three of us for you to be enabled. And it's not easy for companies to do this on their own, writing their own application to do a port control, and to install your own tandem switches at the central offices. So Rick Knight quickly understood his company's strategic value in enabling virtual carriers, wireless or voice over IP resellers, with the same abilities that Vonage was seeking. And so we got together and CLA built out full enabled fractional staffing for our carrier customers to have an AOCN, and I'll explain that a little bit later. But essentially, the first step is to acquire the authority from the FCC that was granted in 2016. As Rick mentioned, that's the IPES, or IP-enabled service provider authorization, and that gives you the right to then acquire a presence in the databases that route calls under your company's authority. And this was made available to wireless carriers as well as interconnected VoIP carriers. The registration is administered by a company that has recently changed its name, and that name is called iConnective. They hold the registration process to be an administrator of the originating company number, or the AOCN. And some people know the numbering representation of an AOCN as a SPID, or Service Provider ID. It also is a representative of an OCN, an operating company number. Both of those are actually the same. And so to convert an OCN to a SPID, you have to be approved with this IPES application. So there is a jurisdictional committee that reviews that application, and the application often takes anywhere from 60 days in normal times to as much as 6 months to get approval, just because of the backlog at the FCC for times like now, where the industry is under pressure due to some threats that have taken place in the last couple of weeks. So we've seen a flurry of activity to get applications in so that companies can navigate their own traffic and own their own DIDs. When we talk about owning DIDs, it means that your company, registered as a local number authorized carrier, can place itself into the BIRDS database. And so the first step is getting the application. The second step is ensuring that you are registered with the right coding structure with iConnective. And then third, building out your numbers into the routing databases. In this case, we're talking about the Business Integrated Rating Routing Database System, or BIRDS. If you go to the next slide. So when we talk about this process, it really is revolving around a carrier's historical skill set of having an administrator of their OCN. And if you have an OCN, if you have a data OCN in the past, then there were certain requirements that you had to follow for compliance and reporting. And an AOCN is a registered, certified individual that is trained and registered with iConnective. CLA happens to be a fractional resource for AOCN services, and they can be provided to anyone in this audience. But it's important for you to know that if you are simply a reseller, like an agent, and you have not designated yourself as a regulated carrier, in order for you to own your own DIDs, you must first be registered with the FCC. That means that you have to have a federal registration number with the FCC, and you need to be registered as a filer with the 499. So that's called the 499 filer ID. Once you are a filer and registered properly with the FCC at the base level as an interconnected VoIP provider, then CLA can fulfill your application, but it requires two key items. You have to have an interconnection agreement with a tandem service provider, that's Peerless, and you have to have the capability of routing, of porting in and porting out. You have to demonstrate that. And so for our application to be successful, we have to give a technical diagram of your network and your interconnection agreement, and a diagram that shows that you have a direct connection to the Public Service Telecommunications Network, or PSTN. CLA can administer not only the application, but we can also facilitate connecting you to the service provider Peerless and to ATL in such a way that will expedite the application. Once the application is in, CLA has an excellent historical record of ensuring that the application is precise and complete, and we do follow up to try to get ours to flow up to the top of the pile. And we have had some success recently in getting ours moving faster just by being diligent. And once you've received the application, then all the other administrative and compliance steps can be fulfilled by CLA or in partnership with your own internal compliance resources. If you go to the next slide, please. So in closing, just know that the reason we came together 3 years ago was for this purpose shortly after. And I want to thank Rick, and I also particularly want to thank Alan Rim, who is a visionary in the UCaaS market in his own right. And I'm so glad that he was here to kick us off. But what you have is a team that is devoted to you and developing you and your company so that your business model can be sustainable and free to grow the way you want it to grow by owning your own DIDs. Rick?
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. And that is just one step in the overall process, right? As we move on, one of the key things, if we could go to the next slide, please. If you take a look at it from a Peerless overview, is we pride ourselves on really being a disruptor and an aggressive innovator in the marketplace today. That's why when we took a step back a couple of years ago, we said, how do we make this transition all the way through for our customers easy? Everybody always sits back and says, how do I control this product or this service or whatever at level 3 and bandwidth? We're doing it at the top.
Hey, apologize. I'm just jumping in real fast. Somebody, if you could make sure you mute yourself, please.
Please enter your audio
We're hearing
PIN.
somebody's audio.
Pound or sign.
Thank you very much. Sorry about that, Rick. You're good. You're on mute. Rick, I think you might have to toggle your audio. For some reason, it's not working. I had the whole headphone issue.
So I was actually dialed in there, and I just got disconnected a second ago. So I just dialed back in. Rick may be dialing back in now. Apologies.
Okay. I don't have any dance moves I can do, but I'll.
Alan, do we have any questions that are coming up yet while we wait for Rick to come back?
No questions yet. I will prompt people to engage. I got somebody saying I have a lot of questions.
Hello. Can you hear
All
me?
right.
Am I
Yep,
back?
you're in.
There we go.
All right.
Welcome
So I
back.
don't know where I was, but very briefly, as we look at it from a, we Peerless, we always try to be a disruptor in the marketplace, no matter from how we began the business to being aggressive innovators in the marketplace. And that's where it comes down to in this VOIP Evolution perspective. We looked at it that you need to go ahead and have everything from regulatory to porting all the way through, but also you need to have, from a switch perspective, the ability to get the call on the network into its destination, just like a car getting on the highway and getting off the highway. So that's why we built out a fully IP-based network in order to make sure that from a technology perspective, we're always ahead of the game, looking at ways to deliver services to our customers. And one of the great things on this is, before we get into more of the product side, is we always try to give you as much visibility to the network as possible. So what ends up happening is you'll have the tools necessary to look at your traffic, see what's happening on the network in order to make sure that you can react faster to your customers. And that really comes down to the unmatched value and the white glove service perspective, is because the way we look at it is you take price out of the equation, and it really comes down to the quality of the service. You don't want any of your customers calling up or being disruptive from a customer service perspective, because if calls aren't going through and the service is not there, you're not going to be generating any revenue overall. And that's one of the key things behind it. So if we can go to the next slide, because I just really want to touch on this before we get into the products. Can we go to the next slide, or there we go. So if you look at it, we've been in business since 2008. We have grown the business all the way from, 4 markets initially. And the key thing with that is really focusing on redundancy within the network, which is key, resiliency in the network. And we started off with Chicago, Philadelphia, Atlanta, and St. Louis. And the reason for that was purely made it peers, making sure we can get to destinations quickly if there was an issue. Tony and his team have built a fantastic network. We opened data centers in Chicago and Atlanta. Some of our data center stuff is being used by one of the largest search engines out there in order to, is using our services and copying a lot of things we do in the network and in our data centers to fulfill how they build their data centers throughout the country and throughout the world. This just gives you a little snapshot. We're processing over 9 billion minutes a month, which is, in 14 years, is a great milestone to have done from a company perspective overall. Can we go on to the next one, because I'm going to spend a little bit more time on the other, is when you look at where we're going, we're doing data services today. So not only are we looking at if you need to offer SD-LAN, but need IP transit services, we're doing that. We're going to continue to focus our growth on our network growth throughout the U.S., opening more markets nationwide, and also focusing on international expansion. We're up and running in the UK and Canada and are expanding into other markets. If you are going to be at Capacity Europe next week, we will also be there as we continue to launch into France and Germany, providing DIDs and all the services we have today. We can go on to the next slide for us for a second. This just gives you an overview of the total LATAs, the coverage of the U.S. We have over 2 million SIP ports in there today. Over 20 million ANIs are riding our network that we own in our network today. We're connected to over 4,500 switches. But more importantly is the 5 nines of reliability on the network. We built this network to be flexible and to be resilient and to have the redundancy necessary to provide great service to our customers. Can we go to the next, please? So when you look at the products and services, and this is where it really falls into the evolution, right? And what is meant by that today, some of you are probably our customers today who are on the call with us, and you're probably using our DIDs today and buying them from us. And you might be using our local service or going on our tandem services from an access homing perspective, which we'll get into in a little bit more. We really focus the evolution not only from taking a look at the CLA and the porting.com, but as your company grows. There might be certain areas as you start off in this process where you want to acquire your own DIDs and do that in New York, for example, but not ready to bring on California or Texas or Illinois or Colorado. Our system is set up in order for you to take advantage of where that makes sense for you to manage it. So if you want to do a hybrid solution as an interconnected VoIP provider or iPaaS, you can do that. Certain markets you can buy numbers. Other markets you can be an interconnected VoIP provider, or be in some markets you can own numbers and also have numbers from us. We built it to make sure it's very flexible overall. So no matter if you have DIDs out there, or if you need transit services, data services, or messaging services on those DIDs, we can do that as well, giving you the full flexibility to offer your customers all the wide range of services. But it's also in a situation where you do not have to say, I want to do iPaaS only, or I need to do DIDs only. The flexibility is in there for you to go ahead and manage through that process on what best fits your products and your services and your customer needs. If we go to the next slide. So here's where it comes into the advantages of VoIP Evolution, right? And Matt touched on this earlier. It's a very simple process overall. And what that is once you have your OCN and your birds, folks, what it allows you to do is you only really have to do 2 updates within the LERG. One is on LERG 6 and the other one is on LERG 7. And it's very easy. You point your traffic and your DIDs over to us, and we route that calls and those traffic for you and monitor that overall. So really the whole process and taking care of that is very easy. And the question is, what does that do for you? And what that does for you is really give you the ability to control your customers, control your DIDs, take ownership of that. So if you want to do hybrids in different parts of the country and have redundancy and share the business between different carriers, why I'd rather have 100% of the business, you can go ahead and do that. But it gives you that end office functionality. It gives you real-time number management. So if you're porting your numbers and you want to see where it is, you don't have to go to a carrier and say where it's being ported. You can look at your traffic. You can pull things up through our tools and others to see what is the traffic stats, how the network is performing. You can assign, move, and port numbers. You can take a look, and all of this is done through an API, which is very easy to do and take care of it and get it done. You can also continue to offer your customers different CNAM and SMS, and we can look at doing 911, or you can use 911 providers out there to get it done. So it really allows, we call it PSTN control in our iPaaS service, because it really gives you the control to manage your customers without the expense of building out your network. And you can take a look at it with us and other carriers and have that redundancy in there. But it's very simple. It's a couple updates after you get through the regulatory process. It's a couple updates in the LERG to make sure it's routing in there. You get your own silly code out there. You point it to our switch that's in there, and we take care of the rest. And as a lot of you know, we started out being an alternate tandem provider, so we are connected to every major wireless carrier, CLAC, voice over IP provider, and foreign PTT, and the rest. So then over 93% of your traffic, once it hits our tandem, stays on the network, giving you a higher level of service and quality for your customers. But more importantly, that front end portion of with your customers and the interaction with them, you have greater control in getting that done. And that's what we wanted to do. We really wanted to make sure we gave our customers the tools to be more effective and efficient and offer a higher level of customer service to their customers. Can we go on to the next slide? So when you look at it, and I touched on a couple of these already, it doesn't make a difference if you want to be an interconnected VoIP provider, what ends up happening, and you decide one day, hey, I want to be a CLAC. It's very easy. All you do is move that over to your own network and your own switches to get it completed, and it's a very easy process to get done. We sit there, we'll help you with the ICAs and give you ICAs that Matt talked about earlier. And the key thing with this is by utilizing this solution versus being a CLEC or moving down that market is you don't have to build out all that network connectivity that's there today. You don't have to manage the capacity. We do that today, and as we talked about, one of the key points is we process over 9 billion minutes a month on our network. Your traffic will be riding at our interconnection facilities within these markets, getting the same redundancy and everything we take a look at with our customers today. And so when you take a look at it from a cost perspective, a control perspective, and the ease of this getting implemented and the way we have it set up, it's pretty easy to do overall. But more importantly, the whole philosophy, again, it sounds like I'm repeating myself a little bit, is really giving you the control of your service to your customers and getting that taken care of. And it's very easy to have that control over that number. So you're never going to be, sitting back and being sort of held hostage in one situation or other. It really allows you to move that traffic and take care of your customers overall. And it's really just doing, as I said earlier, a couple updates in the alert and getting that completed once you get through all the regulatory process. Can we go on to the next slide, please? And here's what I want to do at this point is because of everything that's transformed and what has happened so far and the ease of doing this, I thought one of the key things is when you're looking for a provider such as Peerless or others, one of the things you really need to look at is what does the network consist of? What should we look for? So I asked Tony to come on, who built our network and one of the co-founders of the company, to talk a little bit about what we do, but more importantly, what you guys should look for as we move forward, especially with the events over the last few weeks and so forth. Tony?
Sure. Thanks, Rick. So at Peerless, all the founders of Peerless came from a background in global voice carriers. We personally had something like, 200 years of experience together or something crazy. But that experience is really what informed our design and should inform the designs of anybody who's functioning as an alternative tandem provider. In our case, that means that we built a coast-to-coast IP network that is purpose-built to carry voice. And it's an IP network with all the standard features of IP backbones for protection, failover, fast reroute, but it's also informed by the historical best practices of telecom. So in our case, that means we built extensive connectivity between the sites. We actually review the fiber paths that all of our circuits take in between sites down to the street level and entrance into the major data centers we're in. We're in 28 data centers, unique physical locations across North America today, but actually extend that footprint into 70 unique locations that we can interconnect directly with our customers and other carriers. And it's that network that allows us to reach all the LATAs and all of the TDM locations, the central offices that we have to interconnect with to provide these services. I never thought I'd spend the second part of my career building out a TDM network again, but here we are 13 years later. We built one of the most extensive TDM footprints in the United States. So again, there should be redundancy and resiliency everywhere in the network, 1+1 protection on every path, on every line card, and protection for all the common elements of your routers and your transport infrastructure. In our case, we operate a completely private MPLS network interconnecting all of our sites that is completely isolated from the public internet. That's a little bit unique in that network's control plane is not shared with anything in our infrastructure that touches the public internet, meaning while we see the same probes and attack traffic that every other carrier does, we're a little bit protected and isolated from that by virtue of that. Every network sees that. It's unfortunately as a fact of life and has become a bigger fact of life in recent weeks. And that's why we've been prepared for a while to deal with some of these things. One of the things that we did years ago was launched a partnership with Arbor. We have their platform deployed within our network to monitor, and we also have agreements with several third parties for denial of service mitigation. You can jump to the next slide. So as I mentioned, security is really a key and core part of our philosophy, our design philosophy. We isolate the call control signaling and inter-gateway traffic, again, onto a completely private network, and distribute our call control, STPs, everything across all of our data centers. So in the event that we were to lose all call control in one location, there's a easy failover to another location, and calls continue to process uninterrupted. We also have an extensive TDM network in place throughout all the NFL cities, NHL cities, and just about everything in between. We operate large POPs, but all the way down to very small markets to interconnect with everyone from large ILECs to independent IOCs. Once again, that DAX infrastructure, it is a key part of our design and differentiator for us. So we've got complete resiliency and redundancy through multiple caps to every central office we need to connect to. And we can jump to the next slide. So unfortunately, as we talked about, denial of service is a reality. It's been a reality for anyone connected to the public internet for a very long time, but more recently, all of us in the voice service provider world have had to place a renewed focus on us. We have seen these attacks for years now. We see the probes every single day. I've got kind of an automated blacklist of attack sources that we see those attacks and probes coming from literally every single day. That needs to be something that any carrier providing these services takes very, very seriously and is prepared for. We've taken those steps. We also work with others in the industry to share best practices and are talking about some other things to try to continue to share the knowledge and continue to make our shared network more resilient. With that, I think that's everything we want to cover about the network and what you should look for when choosing an alternative TAN provider.
Right.
And
so now let's go
we'll
ahead.
hand it off to the folks at ATL.
Yeah. Paul, do you want to go ahead? And by the way, there's some great questions coming in. Go ahead, Paul.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for getting on this call. Alan, thanks for setting this up. I just want to today to discuss and introduce our two main products at ATL. Both have to deal with disaster recovery, ownership, and control. If you heard Rick speaking, that was what he was harping on. He kept repeating ownership, control. So we have two products that we're going to talk about: our L&P services, which are for porting, which brings us to port control, which we'll discuss and how that's working with the VoIP Evolution, and our RESTborg services. RESTborg services deal strictly with the toll-free numbers. We're based on carrier neutral number management. That's what we do. We exist to keep your numbers up and running and just to simplify your number management, and whether it be including porting, routing, disaster control, load balancing, that's what we do. So I just want to tell you a little bit about how we got here. So we were the first. We've been around for 27 years. Probably no one's, most people in the telecom industry don't really know who we are or what we're doing, but we sat at the table with the FCC 27 years ago, and we were the first carrier neutral RESTborg service, and I believe we're the only one out there today in the market. Since then, we've added L&P services, which is port control, which we'll get into in a little while, which will be the crux of my speech. But I just wanted to get in a little bit about, we believe in carrier neutrality is the best path forward. So our solutions are not tied to any service provider. Businesses are free to choose vetted partners who uphold the higher standards of services to their customers. So when you come here to ATL Communications, you are bringing your carriers with you. So on the toll-free side, you bring your carrier. We basically set you up with a RESTborg. We get you your own RESTborg ID. We can get you set up within a day or two. There's no lawyers required for that. anything you want to get done, we can get your toll-free numbers. We'll port your numbers into your toll-free RESTborg ID, and then you'll own and control those toll-free numbers. So now if you have a carrier outage like we saw over the last couple of weeks, you can simply go into our portal and remove the downed carrier. Most companies, their disaster recovery plan right now is basically just opening up a trouble ticket and waiting for the carrier to resolve the issue. So what we do now is we give you the capability, since you own and control those numbers, you can just go into our portal, say, hey, Verizon's down, remove Verizon from routing, send 100% of my traffic over Peerless. And that's what you can do within 3 to 7 minutes. You have taken the down carrier out of route, and you're routing 100% of your traffic over Peerless. Okay. When the carrier tells you that the product, that their termination is back up, you can simply go back into our portal and put the carrier back en route. That's the RESTborg side of it. I just wanted to touch on that because we're getting it. It seems like there's a big trend where everyone wants to own and control. The end user wants to own their numbers. So that's what we're doing here at ATL. That's the toll-free side, the RESTborg services. If anyone wants to see a demo on the portal, I would definitely set one up, and we can talk about that. Let's get into the ATL side of our port control. So just the first thing that you would have to know, I said we're carrier neutral, and so you'd be like, how is ATL on this call right now? They're carrier neutral. What's their affiliation? So when we recommend a customer, we have to know that we're recommending that customer to a provider that's going to give them service, quality, pricing, and treat them with respect and dignity. So when we request someone, like I've been to the trade shows and I have seen customers come up to the Peerless booth, and they don't just shake hands, and it's like a hug, and it's a friendship, like a family reunion. So I'm confident that when I say, hey, go to Peerless, they can help you, I know that Peerless is going to take care of them. And it benefits all of us, because what happens is Peerless is going to take care of them. I'm going to get the business. Matt's going to get the business. I don't know if anyone's ever dealt with lawyers before. It's not really a pleasant experience. With the outages that happened recently, I've been requesting giving all my customers to Matt, who have been asking to get a SPID. It's been a mad rush lately. I've been sending everyone to Matt, nothing but good things to say. He makes the process seamless, easy. He's honest, upfront. He does the best job we can do. So I'm confident that when we send our business to these two, entities, that we know that they're going to do great and they're going to come on board. So we're all going to get business out of it. ATL is going to get the porting, the LMP or the RESTborg. Matt's going to get the FCC business done, and Peerless is going to handle the termination and origination. Okay, so let's go to the slide. I'm going to jump into our port control portal. Someone's not on mute.
Guys, if you don't mind, if you can mute yourself, that'd be great. Tony, could you mute yourself too? Thank you.
Okay, so let's just jump into the portal, and we're going to show you how the portal has evolved from porting to disaster recovery to VoIP Evolution. So we have two main parts of our portal, and we know everybody hates porting numbers. It's the only thing that hasn't changed in telecom in 20 years. It's legacy, it's time consuming, it's laborious, it's costly. Here at ATL, we basically simplified and streamlined this process into one real-time interface, one login, one GUI, one invoice, one browser tab, one support call. So we have a part of the porting process is called Explore. One of our customers has named it Google for phone numbers. What you can do is you can drop a block of numbers in here. You can drop single numbers, toll-free, anything that's part of the North American numbering plan, and we can give you the information on that number, everything you would need to know, where the number's been, where it is now, LATA, OCN, DPC information. So here's like a page of it. So you download a bunch of numbers. You can click on the hyperlink. We'll tell you where that number's been for 10 years, 30 years, we go back. We'll tell you the current SPID that it resides on. So you can you find out where it's been, any information, LRN, all that information's there. And we call that Google for phone numbers. Could you move to the next slide, please? Okay, so this is just a part of the, you could see here, we have all the information for TPP. So if you're going to port a number, it's a pretty painful process. So we try and make it as easy as possible. So here's all the information that you would need to port the number: phone numbers, contacts, emails, how they port, what's required. And we give you that information. That's all part of the portal that you can actually just take a look at and start your porting process immediately. Next slide, please. We have a fully customized order-based dashboard. So you can create this any way you want to create this order, this page. So any information that you feel is relevant to the porting process is right here for you. You give the orders, you give you if it's port in or port out, where the number's coming from, where the number's going to, any information. We give you the status of the port. So what's submitted? Did you submit the CSR? Did you submit the LSR? Is it activated pending? Oh, it's your FOC date. Here, you can see the green check mark over here on the right side. Oh, these numbers are ready to be moved to my SPID. So you can click on that check mark and all 900 of those numbers will automatically be on your SPID immediately. So we're just giving you visibility, control to see and control your porting process. Now, there's a couple of ways you can port a number. The regular way that most people are doing it, they create an order. They've already received their FOC. They're going to create an SV, subscription version, okay? They're going to wait for the losing carrier to build concurrence. When they build concurrence, then you wait for your FOC date. On the FOC date, you just have to come into the portal and activate the green check mark. That's one way of porting, and that's the most traditional way of porting. What we have done here is we have taken porting to another level where we have a white glove service now. And you could basically just say, hey, I'm short-staffed on my porting team, or hey, we have a lot of ports coming in, we can't handle this. You can literally throw those numbers over the fence to us, and we will handle the CSR, the LSR, and all you have to do is activate the numbers on FOC date. So we'll pull the CSR, the LSR on FOC date, and you just come in and activate the numbers. And that's just a standard fee that we charge for that. So that would be something that, makes the process easier. You can think of us as another member of your porting team. If anyone, you guys have all been doing porting, you know what a pain in the butt it is. This is what we do, and this is how we simplified the process. Now, recently, with all these outages, we've had some customers that have their own SPID that are actually using this for a type of VoIP evolution in our portal. So what they're doing is, if you can go to the next slide, what they're doing is they're creating an intra-SPID port. This is just one screen that you can see. I wanted to show you. You can assign tasks to members of your team. You can create notes, and you can cancel a port. You can modify a port. You can do all that in the portal as well yourself, so you don't have to send emails or make phone calls or anything like that. No swivel chairing, no more emails. Next slide. So here's what's happening now. So customers, when they had that outage last week with bandwidth 2 weeks ago, what they were doing in the portal was they had 2 LRNs. So they would just come in and create a port, and they would just change the LRN from, let's say, bandwidth to Peerless. So what they're doing is that's instantaneously. So here's they're creating a port, they're creating the number, they're switching the LRN right here. If you see on the screen, they created an order. Now they go into the order, and what they're doing is they're activating that. So they immediately switch the LRNs to another carrier, and within seconds, that number has been moved to another LRN. That is basically for customers that have their own SPID. So we are moving into a SPIDless process where we'll be working with providers like Peerless as well, where customers can basically come in here, park their numbers, and have the capability to move their numbers from one LRN to another. That's in the future. That will be coming. This quarter, we are doing for SPIDless customers where they can actually come in and they can pull a CSR and LSR. It's in the beta testing, so it's not available yet. So SPIDless customers, we can actually pull a CSR for you as well. So
yeah,
that's
Paul,
just something.
Paul, let me just add in here for a second for
Go
you,
ahead.
if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
This is Rick again. Hey, the key thing here is, through the whole presentation, because we want to save some time for questions as well, is when you look at it, everything that has been established here today is to really give you control on how you can move these numbers. So when we looked for partners like CLA and with ATL, we looked at ways that things could get done fast, quickly, and efficiently. So when you look at this part of it, what ends up happening is if you have an emergency situation, or if you want to change carriers, or you have a huge thing coming on, ATL allows you to go ahead and do that as part of the process. Once again, it's sort of a big word that we use, and it's control, and it's really giving you that control to control your destiny. But Alan, I think we probably should go to some of the questions, since I think we only have about 12 minutes left.
Fantastic. Yeah, thanks, Rick. Great information. I mean, for sure. Obviously, everybody in our space wants more control, wants more redundancy, and that's what you guys are talking about. So, all right. So we got one of the first questions is, what are the benefits to a service provider for becoming an IPES? And I understand what it is, but why do it? I don't know if you feel that was already answered, but if you could answer that.
Yeah, I think we can answer this, and I'll let others chime into it too. Is it really gives you control over your numbers, right? It allows you to manage your customers, take control of it, decide how you're going to run your network, and not be reliant on other folks to do porting or get numbers for you or have the cost associated with it. Matt, would you like to add something onto that?
Yeah, a couple of things. I can think of so many, but what Paul just demonstrated, and the question came in well before Paul explained port control, but what you just saw was visibility and your own interaction with that port. Instead of going to an intermediary and using their tool to port and then checking up on them via email whenever you can, wondering what's going on, you can actually see it visibly. And when there is an issue, you can jump in on it. You know who to contact. So it does give you more control. I always thought it was about saving cost as you grow, which is another one. But the other thing that I bring to my customers, and CLA has hundreds of carriers that we serve, is that becoming your own IPES helps you build an asset and inventory in your company. I used to be an interconnect, and I used to use waylaid DIDs for those ports that missed our deadline. So those FOC dates that missed our deadline. And I know that's not completely deployed by everybody, but getting control over your customer acquisition, reducing your cost, and seeing exactly what's going on is the IP-enabled control that we offer.
Excellent, thank you. There's another question here by Mike Sharp. It's a multi-part question, which I think part of it was answered. It said, would you take us through a day in the life type of flow? And I think we walked through some of the flow. It said port a number, I think we saw that. Order a new single number, I'm not sure if we saw that or not. And then respond to a call quality, call completion issues. I don't know if.
Yeah. Sure. Well, when you look at if you look at a single number portion of it, if you're going to get your own DIDs, you're going to get them in 1,000 block or 10,000 block. So you're going to have those numbers and take them in as being an IPES or an interconnected VoIP provider. You're going to have those numbers in your database today to do it. If you are looking at one of the questions, is I'll tie two of them together, is I think one of the questions, how much sense does it make to have your own numbers and also utilize numbers from another carrier such as Peerless to do it? If you're looking at utilizing Peerless in those markets, which a lot of companies are a carrier in certain markets and they're not. If you take a look at like cable companies, for example, they have their own regions or territory, but they have customers outside that region. So they'll utilize Peerless or another provider to get those DIDs. We route that traffic back. So that's a good example of a hybrid situation. But in this case, you're going to have, if you're your own IPES and you have your block, you're going to have that 1,000 block or 10,000. You're going to pull a number out of your inventory. If you're utilizing us, it's a complete API. You just go right into the database and you reserve that number. It gets downloaded into the system, and almost in real time, it can be activated inside the switch. And
Mike, I think it'd be great if you contacted Peerless on both their IP control and their PSTN control. For your critical markets or your core markets, you can own your own DIDs, and it makes sense to have 1,000 blocks and to acquire your access and registration to the LERG and the birds, where you have a concentration of customers and rely on Peerless and their capabilities in the same network, same quality, but to have them manage those DIDs in those secondary, third markets while you're growing, it's a phenomenal offering that they provide in that area. So you basically get one provider managing all your DIDs, whether you own them or you're letting them manage them for you.
So it feels like maybe a hybrid scenario. So any number that I'm porting, you conceptually work with ATL as part of the porting process. They port the number to Peerless. Onesie, twosie is fine. You don't have to do that as a block, whatever. But if you want to get new numbers, you get them 1,000 at a time. You manage your own inventory, you manage your own utilization, the whole reclamation process, et cetera. So where you don't have the volume, you just get them onesie, twosie from Peerless.
Correct.
At some point, once you've got them from Peerless, do you then, on a periodic basis, on a batch basis, port them over?
Absolutely. That's what's great about the service, right? So when you look at our products, it's really an evolution, right? So when you have those markets and it grows to a part where you want to start getting your own blocks and doing the rest, you can easily port those numbers. It's an internal port from us to your OCN, and you're ready to go. So it's a very
Could that be
easy
set up
process
on kind of an automated basis, Richard, where like, hey, once a week, every Friday at 3 p.m., port any numbers I got new and port them over to me?
Matt, what we would do on that front, really, in those markets, right? We would have to schedule it right where it makes sense to do that, because in some areas it might not make sense, because then you're buying and then you're porting. It's probably just easier to leave them there, but we can have a further discussion on the best process to do that. We're very flexible on that. It's whatever works for our customers.
And from a routing, the third part of my question there was kind of thinking from a routing standpoint. I assume there's no difference from a troubleshooting, from a routing, et cetera, whether I got a onesie, twosie from you or whether I ported it and I own it. Am I understanding right that that's part of the benefit of what you're proposing here, Richard, that it doesn't matter? Peerless is where you go to see those flows, to see any, to resolve any issues, for support on anything, et cetera.
That is correct. That is correct. And we can walk you through that whole process as well.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. That was great interaction. Awesome. Very, very good. So Damien asks, and this might have been somewhat answered, I'm not sure. What is the volume of DIDs recommended to own the numbers? Is there some minimum that you think, you need to have at least X amount of DIDs or?
Well, there's business casing that you can do with regard to that question. Every market is different. We have some clients that only want to be on the island of Manhattan, and that's a massive undertaking because of the number of rate centers that have to be built out, as opposed to Des Moines, Iowa. So there is some business casing that Peerless and CLA have done in the past for clients to help you identify when it makes sense to own your own DIDs versus just utilizing their IP control product to control it, have greater control over your market.
Okay. Sounds like maybe Damien could give you a buzz, reach out.
Yeah.
All right. Ian's question. We have documents on the requirements for each of the European countries as you enter that market?
We have details on that. Today we're only operational in the UK. So once as we expand into the others, we would have documentation for you to review. We have contracts, order forms, call flows, all that kind of fun stuff.
And CLA has a nationwide or a global network of regulatory, legal, and accounting resources. The accounting resources are under our Nexia affiliation. And we're working with companies in the carrier space who are moving to Asia or Europe, Africa, South America, and helping navigate not only the tax component of registration, but also the regulatory requirements. Each country is different, and I would recommend that part and parcel with looking at going to Europe is also doing a corporate structure for income tax planning to know how best to structure your company for the revenue and profit. So.
Great. Awesome. So thank you for that. Mike has a ton more questions. Mike, you're like a plant. Did we pay you to ask all these questions? It's
Well,
awesome.
the bill is coming later, but for the interest of time, you can skip all the way down to the last one because I think the other ones have been answered.
Yeah, because I'm like, wow. So the last one was another question. Let's say Peerless gets DDoS and goes down hard. For numbers I own, what flexibility do I have for local numbers as opposed to numbers I get from broad PW and Lumen?
Yeah, I think one of the key things, and I'll let Tony touch on this as well if he would like, but the key thing here is when you talk about, you saw our relationship with ATL and porting.com, if you looked at the one scenario, and a lot of this happened over the last weeks where traffic was coming onto our network, you're going to have the ability as an iPaaS to go ahead, you have that OCN, you have those numbers, and almost a real-time process with our relationship with ATL, you're going to be able to port those to another network. God forbid that ever happens. It's going to be a bad day for Tony. Bad day for me, but worse for Tony, right? But the overall thing is with the ATL and the solution, it's really the redundancy, right? We understand that you need some kind of provision or a backup plan, and we reacted very quickly when it happened to others, which we feel bad about. And then the second thing, well, not from a business perspective, but no one wants anyone's network to be attacked. But secondly, the other thing too is with ATL, you'll be able to go right into porting.com and report those to another LRN on another network and be able to route that traffic almost in real time. So there's redundancy built into this if necessary. Now, Lumen and bandwidth and the rest really don't give you that flexibility or do this kind of program. We do because it's your customers, and hopefully by doing that, if we have that issue and we resolve it, hopefully you will give us another shot to process that traffic again.
Okay, so it sounds like two options, and I can follow up, but option one is quickly port. Option two is redirect, point to someone else's LRN.
Correct.
And I'll add one more thing. What you should do, and any time you're going down this road, you should be directly connected with your carrier. I mean, one of the main issues that people have seen during these recent denial of service attacks is exhaustion of public internet transit bandwidth. If you're directly connected to your carrier, you're largely in a position to avoid that altogether, and you're connecting directly to their network and should be able to continue to function. That's a key part of the design that it seems to be getting overlooked a lot. So keep that in mind.
Right, and that's one of the key things that we do, and a lot of customers got a little upset with us. It happened even years ago. We believe in doing private connectivity with our customers and not public IP. We'll use public IP as a last resort for redundancy. We really don't like it. We believe we need to be directly connected with each other because of exactly what Tony said. And if you remember a couple of years ago, Level 3 had a huge transit issue on their IP backbone network, and it caused a lot of customers a lot of pain on that front too. Our customers who were directly connected to us did not incur that pain. And that's why we really pushed down that path.
So listen, thank you guys. Really, really appreciate this. It's great information. Hopefully everybody understands that this is part of the value of the CCA is that we bring everybody together. We get experts like Rick, Matt, and Tony, and others to share information and best practices, and because we want to help all our members to succeed. This is the slide you're seeing up here. There's some ongoing virtual meetings that we're having. We've got November 3rd, creating value with a platform provider in Europe, and November 10th, the public safety ecosystem. It starts with subpoenas, and December 7th, the future role of the European channel. So please, attend these events and ask great questions, and hopefully together we'll share and get better. So with that, we'll wrap this up. And thank you guys, and we'll go ahead and make sure that this gets distributed to the folks that need to get it, the recorded version of this. So thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Thanks, Karen.